Anything's possible at Disneyland. That's what Walt said, or maybe that quote is from Horizons, I'm not sure. One thing I am sure of though, is that time and time again Disney parks have made the impossible possible through their mind-bending special effects. So how about Tokyo Disneyland? What special effects do they have there? How do they work, and what makes them so special? I'm Jordan from 8-Bit Theme Park Japan, and today I'm going to count down my top 10 Tokyo Disneyland special effects. I'm sure your mind is already racing thinking of the different rides and attractions at Tokyo Disneyland and which of them have the best special effects, but you're probably not thinking about this first one. Toontown was added to Tokyo Disneyland on April 15th, 1996. Some of you may recognize this date as Tokyo Disneyland itself opened on April 15th, 1983. Whilst Tokyo's Toontown opened 8 years after the one in California, guests could find all of the same attractions, just in a layout that's a mirror image of its predecessor. Whilst Tokyo's hasn't changed as much as California's over the years, there have been some changes. Sadly, the Jolly Trolley in Tokyo has ceased operation, just like in California. But unlike California, on August 24th, 2012, Goofy's Bounce House was replaced by Goofy's Paint and Play House. Although in the Bon Voyage shop at the entrance of the park, you can still see a photo of Tigger enjoying the defunct attraction. This is where we find the first special effect for our list. Whilst you approach the home of everyone's favourite anthropomorphic dog, you'll see that his goofy flair is all over the place. After seeing the goofy scarecrow fail to scare any crows away from his unconventional vegetable patch, you'll see cans of paint stacked up alongside manuals for the latest in painting technology, the Toontown Splatmaster. These blasters may remind you of Toy Story Mania, which opened next door at Tokyo Disney Sea less than 2 months before Goofy's Paint and Play House. But if you're thinking they had some leftover Toy Story Mania blasters and needed something to do with them, you might be mistaken, as while some of the Splatmasters do use the same string pull to trigger, there are also Splatmasters which use buttons and a wheel to launch paint at Goofy's living room walls. Using projection mapping, the paint appears to splat on the wall before then transforming the wall into one of several different themes, seemingly based on different areas of Tokyo Disneyland. Once an item has been covered in paint, the entire thing will become animated. This creates a fun race against the clock to try and uncover all of the secrets. At the end of the game, the entire room transforms to show you everything that you may have missed. Whilst the game is a lot of fun, and I do recommend it as it's usually the shortest wait in the park, the special effect isn't anything mind-blowing. However, I found it unique enough to get onto our list, albeit in the number 10 spot. One of the themes you can transform Goofy's room to is a Polynesian theme, which might remind you of Adventureland. This area of the park also has an attraction which has changed over the years, although not as much as it has in other Disney parks. After opening with the park in 1983, on September 8, 2014, Jungle Cruise became Jungle Cruise Wildlife Expeditions. I've talked about this transformation a little bit in other videos on the channel, but to briefly recap, the enhancement changed the skipper's spiel to appeal more to a Japanese audience, after the original version was simply a rough translation of the American spiel. They also added props and gags to the queue line, background music to many of the scenes, and lighting to completely transform the ride at nighttime. This is the reason I normally ride Tokyo's Jungle Cruise at night. It's so pretty. But whether you ride at night or in the daytime, you'll no doubt notice one other addition that was made to the ride. Another change made to the script was the inclusion of 3 charms dangling at the front of the boat, depicting a tiger, an elephant, and a monkey. In what could be considered the finale of the ride, we enter a mysterious temple, which has 3 different transformations based on one of the 3 charms. When you enter, you'll hear the animals' sound before seeing them appear in the flame. The magic of the flames then touches every part of the temple walls, shining, shimmering, and indeed quite splendid. Whilst using the same projection mapping technology as they used in Goofy's Paint and Play House, the setting and execution of this effect make it feel a lot more impressive and makes for a memorable finale to this classic Disney ride, putting it at 9th place on our list. One of the most enduring aspects of Walt's original Disneyland park was the idea of different lands based on different locations, time periods, and stories. That's the reason we can take a short stroll and get from the middle of the jungle to a spaceport. Tokyo Disneyland's Tomorrowland is a little confused, with robotic healthcare companions, monsters, and toys all calling it home, but one aspect that is shared in many of these attractions is that of space travel. Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters, Stitch Encounter, Space Mountain, and Star Tours all share this theme, and it's this last ride that takes us to a galaxy far, far away, where we can find our next special effect. Anyone who has ridden Star Tours in Disneyland, Hollywood Studios, or Disneyland Paris will know that the best part of the ride isn't the ride, it's the queue. In one of the best queue lines Disney have ever made, you'll see tons of animatronics and set pieces immersing you in this faraway world. Tokyo Disneyland's queue adds a little extra, as in the first part of the queue you can see adverts for different locations found in the Star Wars movies, and also see a full-size Starspeeder 1000 above your head. You then enter more familiar territory, where you can see C-3PO and R2-D2 preparing another Starspeeder to take off. I love that these guys are animated too. The next room is the one that changed the most in the 2013 update. After walking past these delightful hitchhiking droids, no doubt a reference to Haunted Mansion, considering there's 3 of them and they even have similar heights, you'll see a droid scanning people's bags. What's impressive about this is that you see real physical bags move along a conveyor, but when they stop, the scanner reveals what's inside. The effect is very convincing and uses a mixture of projection mapping and Pepper's Ghost, which is another thing you may recognize from the Haunted Mansion. Yes, we'll get to that one later. Essentially, Pepper's Ghost has you look through a window and lights up some things behind the window and some things in front of it, so both things appear to occupy the same space. Just like when it's dark outside and you look out of a window and see a reflection of yourself as well as seeing what's outside. The way this effect adds projections and all the moving parts working together seamlessly pulls off this effect. I wish they had these at the airport. So far, we've seen lots of modern effects using projections, but this next one is about as old school as you can get. There are few things more eye-catching than fire, and theme parks have tried many different ways to convincingly portray fire in their rides and attractions. Like in 1967, when the first generation of Imagineers wanted to create a scene in which playful pirates kindle and char and flame and ignite, but didn't want to scorch the building down, so used a very simple effect with an orange light, a fan, and a piece of fabric. The fan would flap the fabric, creating movement similar to that of a fire. Imagineers love to tell the story of showing the Parisian version of the ride to French officials, and them thinking it was a real fire. But I kind of think this is probably a case of Americans not understanding dry European sarcasm. I'm British and I don't always realise when it's sarcasm either. You can see this same effect in a smaller scale on Sinbad, although this torch uses a blue light as well, which I think adds a really colourful element, helping it to fit into this highly stylised ride. While we're at Disney Sea, we can find this same fire effect in Journey to the Centre of the Earth, where you see flames coming from the ride vehicle that plunged into the lava. This ride also uses another approach to depicting flames. Flames! Modern rides often use real fire, which is always exciting. I have to say, my favourite fire effect in a ride isn't actually in a Disney park. Revenge of the Mummy's brain fire effect, where the whole ceiling instantly becomes engulfed in flames, is so cool, and I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen it used more. So when modern rides want fire, they get fire. But what if I told you there's something in Tokyo Disneyland that's been there since it opened in 1983, which uses real fire? Anyone who's seen my Relics of the Past videos will know that unlike the Magic Kingdom and Disneyland, Tokyo Disneyland still has their settler's cabin, and once more, it's still burning away after all these years. It's a simple effect, designing steel to look like wood so that it doesn't burn down, but it's impressive that this thing has been burning away for all these years, and it's always a highlight of the Mark Twain Riverboat or the Western River Railway. For our next special effect, we're going back to Toontown, this time to get on one of the rides. And whilst I do love the hand crank climb hill on Gadget's Go Coaster, for this special effect we're heading to the Toontown Cab Company. Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin is full of brilliant gags and zany environments from the instant you step through the door and see Roger's silhouette has blasted through the other one. Throughout the queue, you'll take a tour of downtown Toontown, meeting some of its inhabitants and even getting peeks at the ride. After seeing backstage at the theatre, the back streets, and the hidden location where the weasels are making dip, you'll get to the taxi company where you board your cartoon cab. The vehicles have a unique interactive component in that if you turn the steering wheel, the ride vehicle spins like a teacup. While this adds a lot to the wacky and unpredictable nature of the ride, it can make it difficult to fully appreciate the scenes. After seeing the weasels pouring dip under Roger's cab, another projection effect, we smash through a china shop, through the power station, and then plummet through the roof of the gag factory where the final act of the ride takes place. As the ride reaches its conclusion, you'll see the head weasel trying to squirt you with dip. But right at the very end of the ride is where we see this brilliant special effect. Roger grabs a portable hole and sticks it on the wall for us to go through, saving us from our fate. The first time I saw this I was blown away as it looks so convincing, And whilst it's not an effect we've seen yet in this video, it is something Disney use a lot and we'll see more of later on. It's actually quite simple. There's a mirror on the side of the tunnel which reflects the wall, making it seem like the wall continues behind the hole. The mirror then moves along with the gate to give the appearance of the hole being put onto the wall, which was painted specifically to be able to be mirrored without it looking odd. The inside of the tunnel is completely black to continue the appearance of this black hole. You can see it much more clearly in this lights on photo. This is such a brilliant effect, and it really gives the end of this wacky ride a great punch before sending you back into the station, which is what gets it at my number 6 spot. Now, of course, if you visited Disneyland in California, you'll know all about the portable hole, but this next effect can only be seen at Tokyo Disneyland. This is yet another space-themed part of Tomorrowland, but this special effect isn't in a ride, or even a show. In 1989, to complement the addition of Star Tours, OLC wanted a brand new counter-service restaurant, a pizza place to be precise. Imagineering wanted to give guests something out of this world, so they developed Galactic Pizza Port, the franchise's first branch in this solar system. The first thing you'll notice is the restaurant's manager, Tony Solaroni, who the parks have been selling plushies of recently. How adorable is this? Whilst he seems jovial, especially when he's singing, if you stick around for the entire 30-minute runtime of this repeating show sequence, you'll see that his life is kind of a travesty. Light years away from his friends and family, his wife berates him, his boss berates him, and he seems stuck at this far-out location for the foreseeable future. Luckily, he's passionate about creating great pizza, and he does so with the help of the latest in pizza-making technology, the PZ5000. This enormous Rube Goldberg-esque contraption does everything from kneading the dough, to tossing the pizza bases, to squeezing the tomatoes, to applying the cheese, and all in full view of the guests. Whilst the effects used in the PZ5000 are pretty old school and easy to figure out, the way they all come together is pure Disney magic, and the sort of thing we really don't see much of anymore. You have to hand it to Tokyo Disney's excellent maintenance for keeping this thing running perfectly after over 3 decades. If this was in any other theme park, I highly doubt it would still look this good. Right next to Galactic Pizza is somewhere where you'll find dozens more creative creatures, who are also just clocking in and doing their jobs. However, since the change in management, their work has become a lot more playful. Monsters Inc. Ride and Go Seek takes guests into Monsters Incorporated on board one of their security vehicles. However, as the ride takes place after the events of the film, the monsters are no longer using scream power and instead rely on getting laughs out of their kids. It's for that reason that they've opted to have a factory-wide game of hide and seek with the lovable Boo. This ride's lead designer was Joe Lancicero, one of the few more recent Imagineers to have started as an animator for Disney. Funnily enough, his first work for Imagineering was animating one of the video sequences for Meet the World, an animatronic show that used to be exactly where Monsters Inc. is today. Lancicero was a lead Imagineer for Toontown and Roger Rabbit's cartoon Spin as well, where you can actually see one of his likenesses in one of the clown Jack-in-a-Boxes. You feel a lot of that wacky Toontown energy in Ride and Go Seek, but they did something really smart with this one that also helps it to be authentic to the movie. One of the big jokes of the film was that this wacky monster workplace was actually quite humdrum and bureaucratic for its workers. This works in the ride's favour, as the first thing you'll see is the outside of the building, which looks just like the one in the film, although a bit smaller, a brutalist concrete factory. Inside, you'll recognise the foyer from the film too, and whilst it's all accurate, it's also kind of dull. This plays brilliantly for a ride, as it provides such a strong contrast to the bombardment of scarers turned jokesters that you find in the ride, heightening that high energy feeling. As you pick up your flashlight and point it at the helmets of the monsters, you'll see that every single one reacts to your torch. A much more satisfying reward than a number going up, as far as I'm concerned. I'll do a full video breaking down everything that makes this ride so brilliant at some point, but for now, let's focus on the special effects. We see Randall using his camouflage powers, which is yet another Pepper's Ghost effect, Mike being electrocuted, which is a simple UV light, and Mike's pupils dilate when a mischievous monster shines the torch at his face, which is both a great gag and also a brilliant visual way to show kids that it's not cool to shine the torch in people's eyes. Whilst those are all great, there are 2 special effects in this ride that really stand out to me. Like the portable hole in Lancicero's Roger Rabbit ride, these are both deceptively simple and just rely on mirrors. First is this blink and you'll miss it monster who pulls off the classic cartoon gag of disappearing behind something thin. And whilst it's just a mirror, For how quick the effect is, it's really impactful when you see this monster disappear into thin air, especially amongst the madness of this seemingly outdoor Monstropolis scene. The other effect is one that's a lot easier to spot and comes at the end of the ride. Once Boo has been found and it's time for her to go home, we see her door again, but this time it's open, and as the vehicle moves past, it seems like her room magically appears through the door when we can see that there's nothing behind it. Actually, the room is a triangular shape and there are mirrors on the outside reflecting the striped walls to make it seem like the walls continue behind the door. Two absolutely brilliant special effects that add so much to this already incredibly fun ride. Speaking of fun rides that are exclusive to Tokyo Disneyland, this next ride changed dark rides forever with its innovative trackless ride system. But it wasn't just the ride system that left a lasting impression on people. Pooh's Honey Hunt captured the hearts of those who rode it with its charming environments, playful ride layout, and gorgeous animatronics. I love that they made a choice to make the characters look more like teddies than the designs from the animated movies. Not only does it make them all look super cuddly, but I think it really gives the ride its own identity, rather than just feeling like clips from the movies. As well as all this, the ride uses a few different special effects to up the wow factor and really make this ride unforgettable. The first thing you'll see is Pooh getting blown away as the animatronic rises up on a support beam that's hidden behind it. Once the animatronic is concealed by the leaves above, another one emerges, suspended from a rail, to give the illusion that Pooh is flying through the air, holding onto his balloon. It's another brilliant effect that really adds to the chaos of this scene, forcing you to not only look all around you, but also to look above you. But it's not the special effect that stands out from this ride. The next scene is one that always takes people by surprise, where the vehicles stop on a motion base that moves up and down as you bounce along with Tigger. To emphasize the movement, the trees in the foreground also move up and down in sync with the motion of the vehicles. Other effects in the ride include the scent of honey at the end, this cannon, hitchhiking heffalumps, and my personal favorite, this ride vehicle filled with heffalumps and woozles. Oh, I just love it, it's so fun. But by far the most impressive effect is the Pepper's ghost used as Pooh falls asleep. The effect will be familiar to those who've ridden the other Winnie the Pooh rides around the world, but this one is done so well, with the addition of the balloon turning into a heffalump and all the stars around. It just looks so great. The effect of having the ghost of Pooh overlap with the actual model creates a brilliant illusion of him floating out of his body. But in actuality, we're looking through a window, which is reflecting a different Pooh that's moving just out of our sight. Whilst this effect is very well done, it's just one of the many that make this ride through the 100-acre wood so memorable. Disney have been making special effects in their rides for a very long time, and whilst the original Fantasyland dark rides had some crude effects in them, it was in the late 60s that Imagineer Yale Gracie became fascinated with effects and illusions. This led to the creation of one of the greatest Disney rides of all time, and one that is absolutely full of special effects. Despite its age, the effects throughout the Haunted Mansion continue to amaze and astonish its guests. Whilst Tokyo lacks some of the more modern additions, such as the Endless Staircase or the Hatbox Ghost, we do have the moving busts, the floating candelabra, and Madame Leota. But for me, there are two effects that just really stand out in this ride. They're both iconic, like just about everything in this classic attraction, but perhaps none more so than the hitchhiking ghosts. It's easy to take for granted now, but you can always tell if someone is riding for the first time, as you'll see them turning around and trying to look behind them in the vehicle, completely bemused as to how they pulled this trick off. Again, it's another window with the ghosts moving along their own little ride path at the same speed as your vehicle, so when you see your reflection, and the other thing you can see is the ghost, it's incredibly convincing. However, I think there's one more effect which, although achieved in exactly the same way, is just jaw-dropping from the sheer scale of the scene. I'm of course talking about the ballroom. It's like any great scene from a classic Disney ride, absolutely filled with lifelike animatronics and tons of different gags, but the entire thing is one enormous Pepper's Ghost effect. It's always a treat when the ride vehicle stops here because you can never get enough times looking at this scene. You might feel like some of the earlier, more modern effects are more impressive than what's found in the Haunted Mansion, and you might be right, but you have to show reverence to the OG special effects ride. However, there is one other effect at Tokyo Disneyland which undoubtedly takes the crown for the best special effect in the park. And whilst it wouldn't be possible without that same Pepper's Ghost effect used in the mansion, the way it embellishes the effect with stunning animatronic figures and projection mapping can only be described as jaw-dropping. The Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast finally opened at the park in 2020, after months of delays due to the pandemic. After so long of seeing this foreboding castle, we finally got a chance to see what was inside. The experience starts out somewhat dark, with tones of the aforementioned Haunted Mansion, before getting into the pre-show and seeing the gorgeous stained glass window come to life. Strangely enough, not the only enchanted stained glass window in a pre-show at Tokyo Disney, but that's a story for another video. Perhaps one could describe what happens next as an effect when these two breathtaking animatronics appear to walk onto the balconies, achieved simply by moving them on a rail and playing the sound of footsteps. As you get into the ride, the tone gets more playful, and we kick off by seeing Lumiere proudly present our dinner. This puppetronic uses rods to move his hands, achieving the elastic movement of his arms that wouldn't be possible with a traditional animatronic. After Be Our Guest, we go into the Something There scene, which, whilst also hosting two incredible animatronics, does slow the pace of the experience down a little. But what comes next will not fail to get your heart pumping again. We see the Beast's body on the ground, with Belle sitting next to him. Suddenly, his body levitates off the ground, rotating in the air before vanishing, to be replaced with the prince in his human form, slowly lowering back down to the ground. Whilst it would be simplistic to describe this as another Pepper's Ghost effect, that's exactly what it is. But the different moving parts, the projections, and how well concealed the mechanisms are with careful lighting make this probably the greatest Disney special effect of all time. The ride has its fans and its critics, but nobody can argue that this scene is anything other than jaw-dropping. If you want to learn more secrets about Tokyo Disneyland, I'm sure you'll love this video, so check this one out next.